Hereby, I open this academic ceremony in which María Menéndez de Medina will defend the academic thesis, Technological Change and Production Specialization in the Green and Digital Transition. May I invite you to present a summary of your study and the conclusions of your thesis.
Thanks so much. 5 years ago, when I began my PhD, countries were already talking about going digital and going green. Then the COVID came, and it turned these ambitions into urgent necessities. That shift sparked my interest in how countries not only configure their economies, but also how green and digital transitions interact. There is no doubt that this issue topic with an is evolving at an incredible pace, especially with the eruption of artificial intelligence. While considerable progress has been made in understanding the interplay between green and digital transitions, several attempts have been made to study these interactions empirically. Yet, important dimension remains underexplored. These dissertations aims to examine the synergies between green and digital transitions through a multi-level analysis spanning technological and productive domains. In this regard, the research questions of my thesis has been, are green and digital transition loosely connected developments or a unified stream of technological change? Can radical novelty and incremental change be identified in green and AI technological trajectories? To what extent are digital and green technologies complementary in developing countries? And lastly, as countries shift towards export and imports toward more green and digital products, does this reflect productive transformations or reinforce past dependence? So the outline of my thesis covers the following points. First of all, it involves a technological characterization in which I examine whether green and digital technologies develop independently or converge into a unified stream. In second place, we explore radical versus incremental innovation in green and AI patents and predict the emergence of radical novelty. Third, to analyze green and digital adoptions are complementary in firms and in which characteristics enable this. And last, we studied the productive specialization, and the chapter 5 assessed whether specialization in green and digital products drives a structural change and or reinforces path dependence. So my first chapter, Embracing Green and Digital or Both, a patent-based landscaping of twin transition technologies. The objective of this chapter was to provide an empirical contribution by exploring technologies driven by the green and digital paradigm. In this regard, we investigate the thematic difference among these green and digital technologies. And the idea is to understanding the characteristics and relationship of these technologies at some point to study the reason in this area. So the research question was, does the twin transition represent two loosely connected or technological developments or a convergent unified stream of technological change? What I did was I used data from patent data. I identified digital technologies, green technologies, and green and digital technologies. And what I used as a method is that I focused for this characterization of the technologies, what I used was the text data from patents, so that I have the information to study these differences in terms of the different technologies. My findings was that green technologies, I characterized the three of them, and what I found is that the green technologies form a distinct thematic area separate from purely digital or green and digital technologies. Also, I find that there is an interaction between green and digital technologies that give rise a specific technological domain that is very important for twin transition, largely dominated by digital technologies that engage the efficiency in production process, particularly with technologies linked to IoT and other sectors such as building and transport. And then I found that strictly green and digital technologies are some different technologies, and in the case of the digital technologies, they remain quite limited and at some point that highlights the constraints of a green shift only focused on digital. So that is a very important thing. The chapter 3 is focused on radical novelty in AI twin transition trajectories, and what I did is to examine technological development of twin transition through the technological paradigm framework using patent citation networks to identify radical novelties and incremental change in green AI trajectories. Our hypothesis in this chapter was that interaction between environmental and AI technologies can be traced within the technological trajectories, and also that these trajectories reveal differences in terms of radical novelty and incremental change, enabling the analysis of the occurrence distribution and the predictability of emerging radical innovation. And this chapter, what we did again is to use EPO patent applications, so again patents, and using as a main method the search path north pair, we identify green and green technologies and chapter 2, and in the case of digital, we focus only on AI, and then we construct a novelty indicator using these patent pairs, but we use it text analysis too. And we analyze novelty distribution within the technological trajectory. And what we find is that these results help to understand the development of green and digital technological productive paradigm. And what we find that was the result is that the emergence of a paradigm requires radical innovation that open new directions for technological development, and also depends on incremental and cumulative innovation building on original advances. Then also we identify that green technologies are more innovative than non-green ones, and the green technology seems to be open new paths for technological development in twin transition. Last but not least, we find that green technologies are central to the transformation of productive systems oriented towards decarbonization. Then the chapter 4, what I did was the adoption of twin transition technologies in developing countries. In this case, it's a paper in co-authorship with Alejandro Labopa, and what we did is, instead of focusing on the technological change that we were focusing on chapter 2 and chapter 3, what I focused this is on the adoption of the technologies. In that regard, what I did was we examined how industrial firms in developing countries adopt digital and green transition, complementary, and which are the characteristics associated with this adoption. And also explore whether patterns differ from those studies that are in developed countries. And our research questions were: what are the skills, capabilities, and framework conditions required to this transition, and to what extent this transformation, and to what extent the firms going digital and going green. In this regard, we use a data set from UNIDO in 658 manufacturing firms from Ghana, Thailand, and Vietnam. And this survey has a module on sustainability and a module on digital technologies. And we apply bivariate econometric methods because we believe that they capture the interdependence between the green and the digital adoption. So the results were that the adoption of green and digital technologies is interrelated and complementary, and the patterns align with the evidence from developed countries too, that larger firms and those integrated in global value chains are the ones that are more likely to adopt both technologies. Last but not least, in the 5 chapters, so we went through technological change, then we go to adoption technologies, and in the last chapter, what I want to study is the production side. So what I did was and this chapter is called Twin Transition Trade based on multidimensional economic complexity, and what I focused was on the product side. So I forget about technologies, and we come back to products data, trade data. So the objectives is to examine to what extent countries that they have to insert into this green and digital technology change the export and import productive structures, and how that is associated with different variables of sustainable development. And also, another thing that we do in this chapter is to identify a basket of products that are more linked to twin transition, right? So products that are more green, more digital, and so on. In this idea that countries should at some point introduce and insert in this new form of trade. So research questions were, how do countries export and import specialization in green and digital transition products vary across sustainable development variables? And does this type of productive transformation perpetuate path dependence in countries' specialization? And what we did was we used trade data extract from BASI CEPI from the period 2000 and 2018 for 80 countries. And we extract some data from sustainable development variables. And we use as a method the canonical correspondence analysis, that is a multivariate technique that at some point allows to countries' product specialization how the products relate to sustainable development factors, and groups by occurrence or across countries and links them to explanatory variables. So the results are the following. So we identified that in the case of, we identified different export and import patterns. In the case of export patterns, we identified that high income and low inequality and polluting countries are the ones that are more specialized in green digital and green digital products, while the fast-growing and more unequal are specialized more in critical minerals for green techs. And in the case of the imports, what we see is that the ones that import more digital and green digital are the ones that has a higher GDP per capita, a higher growth of GDP per capita, while the green imports are associated are more linked to higher inequality countries. What we see is that we identify some patterns of path dependence in this new structural transformation. So what we see is that green exports remain in developed countries, while digital imports at some point still remains in developing countries, but enable upgrading in developing countries such as China, for example, and some countries, and those are the ones that at some point can break the path dependence by acquiring new comparative advantages. So that is our main result of the chapter 5. So the main conclusions that I want to raise here is that, first of all, we identified that in the case of green and digital technologies, we identify distinct, but that green and digital technologies are a specific thing. They are distinct but converge in efficiency domains such as IoT, industry, and transport. That green drives radical innovation, and AI supports incremental improvements. In the third place, we identify that in what is firm adoption and complementarity, that green and digital technologies adoption is complementary and driven by large, globally connected firms. And the third point, in the case of the production, is that twin transition shapes the economic outcomes, especially in high-income, low-inequality countries, lead to green and digital exports, while there is, in the digital imports, boost growth and selective path breaking enables structural transformation. That's are mostly the conclusions of this thesis. I strongly believe that there are a lot of policy implications in this thesis. First of all, my results suggest that green and digital technologies, the combination of them, they represent an hybrid yet interconnected space. So that means that for the case of R+D programs, they need to engage the convergence of those domains in the case we want to insert virtuously into a green and digital transition. In the chapter 2 and 3, they illustrate that the interaction between green and digital technologies doesn't go alone, doesn't guarantee sustainability. It's something that I want to highlight a lot. And also policies should promote green radical innovation and leverage AI to amplify the cumulative progress in sustainable development. That's another policy implication. In chapter 4, I think that there's a lot of policy implications in a sense that what it highlights is that SMEs cannot go into separate ways in terms of the adoption of digital or adoption of green. They have to be balanced and coordinated strategies towards achieving digitalization and sustainability. And the policies measures should support SMEs and promote programs linked to both digitalization and sustainability. And so that's resources to, at some point, choose both strategies, not one or two, or the other one. And the chapter 5, what is the policy implication of this is the necessity for countries to insert into green and digital transformation, the necessity of broader diversification policies with especially a core into the facilitating transfer and sharing of knowledge across countries and products. This is very important. If not, what our results suggest is that with this transformation of green and digital will only reinforce patterns of core and periphery that we all know from other productive specialization. So that's the other policy implication that I want to highlight from my thesis. In the last, of course, this thesis is not, has a lot of points for further development. So there are a lot of things for developing this thesis. First of all, I think that the technological part should be linked to the chapters connected with technological change should be connected with the dynamics of national innovation systems, and exploring something that my thesis doesn't explore is how institutions and learning capabilities shape technological trajectories in the twin transition. That is something that has to be developed, to be developed. Other thing that I think that should be developed or can be developed for sure is this, the method that I have been used for chapter 2 and chapter 3, that they are connected with using the natural language models. I think that since I started the PhD and now, there has been a uprise of these models to develop, and I think that this is something that can be for sure been extended. Regarding to the firm level adoption, I think that the thesis has been done a very important contribution towards studying the process of digitalization and sustainability at the firm level data. I think that that is a very good starting point, let's say. But I think that still there is a lot to understand other countries, how is the adoption of technologies in other countries. Still, I think that although it has been used as an empirical approach, there is a lot of space to develop surveys and other type of data, adoption data, in order to develop this sort of studies. Still, again, the data remains very scarce in this regard, because the firm level, the service doesn't have like this model of green and digital. And last but not least, in the case of economic complexity, I think that still there's a lot of space for develop the multidimensional economic complexity approach, but by examining different sort of products, by incorporating more products in my twin transition basket, and to include more other. What is the advantage of the method that I have used is that it is possible to identify and to incorporate other sustainable development that give us other ideas on how the association of these products with some other variables. So that's it.
Thank you for your presentation. The opposition will be opened by Professor Dr. René Belderbos, who was the chair of the assessment committee. And Professor Belderbos is both a professor of strategy at the Catholic University of Leuven and the professor of international corporate strategy here at this university. The floor goes to Professor Belderbos.
Thank you. Dear candidate, congratulations on the completion of this PhD dissertation, which I read with interest. I think it's a welcome contribution to our insights into the twin transitions to a digital and green economy. What I like is the comprehensive approach. So you have analysis in the technology domain and in the production and trade domain, and analysis at the micro and macro level. So I like very much the comprehensive approach, and you have no less than 4 chapters, and each of them can make a good contribution to the literature, and one of them has already been published. So well done. And of course, we are here to have some academic exchange on the dissertation, and that even still covers, in my case, the published paper, because publication doesn't preclude it from being a subject of this public defense. But my general question, I have a general question, and then I have a follow-up question that relates to the implication of that question or your answer in terms of how you interpret the results in chapter 4. Okay, so my general question is about the core concept in the dissertation on complementarity. One of the core questions is whether there is complementarity between green and digital technologies, and maybe complementarity in the adoption of these technologies. But what I found is that there is not really an exact definition of what you consider complementarity. And I would like to hear your views on what your definition would be. And maybe a hint is that being complements is not the same as being complementary. So I'd like to hear your thoughts on that, and depending on the answer, I can frame my second question. Yes.
Thanks so much for your questions. Yes, definitely. I think that it's a very pertinent question regarding to the complementarity. The main aim, as you were saying, is of this dissertation was to study the synergies, and in the case of firms, that is the chapter 4. Of course, first of all, we have limit, let's say, data, because we have data from digitalization and digital from some green technologies. Unfortunately, I think, and that's why, as we were interested in how both at some point interplay, because there is a lot of literature that says that productive firms are the ones that, or they have more productivity, are the ones that adopt digital technologies, or and the ones that are more greener or adopt more energy management practices and so on are the ones that are more productive or that have more sales and so on and so forth. But in our case, we want to combine both. It's true that in the paper, there is not a clear idea of how they complement. It's like that's why we at some point use the bivariate analysis, bivariate method, because at some point, if that method gives us the possibility to see which are the factors that may be explaining by both adoptions, that was at some point the definition or our clue that these technologies were at some point connected. But it's right that there is not a clear definition of complementarity, like as you were saying. We were just taking this method as a way to see how jointly adopt. But I think that is more jointly adopt rather than an idea of complementarity in the way that I think that you are thinking.
So what is the way you think I'm thinking?
No, sorry. No, but in a sense that, no, for example, because there is a possibility that in the way that the data is structured, for example, we cannot see, we cannot see that the adoption of a digital technology, let's say, it is having an impact on being more efficient of the firm, right? We don't have that possibility because of how the service is structured to see that type of complementary. We just have like kind of separate blocks of those that adopt digital and those that adopt green, and then we use this method to analyze this. But we cannot go into more into further on this type of how the impact of the adoption. But I can go to
What would be your definition?
my definition of complementarity. Well, in this paper is that they adopt. It's like
Conceptually, the definition.
conceptually.
Without the immediate application to chapter 4, but in general.
Well, that it can be the complementarity. It can be something that it is used as I was telling you, something that is digital and also helps to improve efficient processes. Let's say, like that can be the complementary thing.
Okay, so my thinking on this
Yes.
to take inspiration from the work of Milgram and Roberts. We talk about super additivity, and yeah, and maybe it's related to scope economies definition. That is, if you have one adoption, if you adopt one technology, then the returns to adopting the other technology increase. So it's a kind of technically some kind of cross-derivative logic.
Exactly. Yes. I understand your point.
In that sense, joint adoption will probably be related, can be related to the presence of complementarity, but it doesn't mean that there is complementarity. Because if I have, if a firm would adopt, let's say, consumer response AI type of software, maybe it's good in itself, and they have more solar panels adopted in the same year.
Sure.
Then there are two technologies adopted, green and digital, but doesn't mean that there's complementarity.
It's true. Yes, it is.
And in that chapter, you look at drivers of the both adoptions, but that's actually not complementary. That's joint adoption. So superadditivity has a different definition, and you would have to test.
Yes.
Okay, so let me already then, because maybe 2 more minutes. We have a little bit more time. Let me get to the follow-up question.
Yes.
How would you, I think you already sort of came a little bit in that direction. How would you test sort of the scientific notion of complementarity if you would have had better data in chapter 4? Like
Definitely. Yeah, no, for sure. No.
So what
If you ask me,
experiment would you set up?
yeah, for sure. If somebody asked me tomorrow to let's prepare a survey that combines these two affairs, would definitely add a question in which you are, I mean, and also it's not something that I have invented, but I have seen that there are new surveys that they go into this direction. If the firm, for example, let's say a firm that, is the firm using AI to improve some sort of efficient processes? Something that connects both from the beginning, I think so. But yes,
Questions?
in that, yes, something like this, not separate, because what happened to me is that I want to see this interplay, because the idea was to see the synergies in two blocks of survey that were not connected. So at some point I had to, let's say, connect both of them. And that's the bivariate was one of the main ideas. But I clearly go in the direction of a question in which I can include both dimensions. Yes.
We will set up a new
Okay.
survey.
Exactly.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
The opposition will be continued by Professor Dr. Effie Kesidou, who is a professor of economics of innovation and sustainability at the School of Management at the University of Bath. The floor goes to Professor Kesidou, who's with us online.
Thank you. Dear candidate, thank you for your presentation and the defense so far. Congratulations on your thesis. I enjoyed reading it, and well done for publishing with your supervisors and other scholars this work. I will start with a question from your chapter 3. And there you argue that innovations are driven by technology pools and demand pool. However, green innovation differs from conventional innovation. for example, the digital innovation, because green innovation is driven by regulatory push. In other words, what I'm saying is that the direction of green technological trajectory is not only shaped by technology opportunities or by consumer demand, but by regulation, environmental regulation, also innovation policies. Without having regulation, we might have zero green patents. So I understand you acknowledge this limitation, but how you consider omitting this important factor influences your findings?
Okay. Yes. Well, thanks so much, Effie. That's a very good question. In fact, chapter 3, it's a kind of, the approach that we use is a very, let's say, it's a theoretical approach to, at some point, understand, as you were saying, the technological change within the framework of technological trajectories, and this idea that within the technological trajectories there might be some radical innovations and some incremental steps, right? So that is the main thing. Regarding the regulations, that's a very good question. In fact, it can be using patent data, as we were using for the building of the trajectories. It may be kind of difficult for including this sort of this regulation aspect. Maybe that I'm just considering that it may be that within the model that we have run, in which we put as a dependent variable the novelty, include some sort of variable that take into consideration some sort of regulation, or maybe some things regarding to patent, some sort of, how can I say, patents, possibilities to maybe there was like more increase in patents, of green patents, because of a treatment or something like that. Maybe we can include that, but I don't see that in this chapter may be possible to include straightforward the regulation aspect. The regulation, as you said, is very important for green technologies, and in the case of patents, or how this regulation has been affected the amount of green. I don't have in mind now any sort of paper or document, but I'm pretty sure that there are, in order to include in this literature. But yes, that's my answer.
Thank you, Maria. You could also have just the variation of institutional context across countries.
Exactly.
So maybe that could be integrated.
Yes, that's a...
I could move now. I would like to move now. I think we have some more time in
The
chapter
short
2.
question, please.
Yes, please.
So there, you differentiate between what you call green technologies or tech fixes and paradigm shift technologies. So can you please explain the difference between the two? And also, could you give some examples? What would be a tech fix of in the context of green technologies, and what would be a paradigm shift in green technologies? Thank you.
Well, that's a very good question. In fact, when in the paper we include a trajectory in which we include one trajectory of the wind and the different steps within each trajectory. again, the paper does not focus so much in giving examples on of which are the green that are more radical, or which are the AI that are less radical. Just make it an example more, just a study more empirically. So now it's not easy to say like one type of technology that may be specifically for more radical or not. What I can tell you is that it is possible to do the regression that we did, in which we use the dependent variable as a novelty and the other step of the trajectory. And it is possible to do it focusing on those trajectories within the green technologies, focusing on different type of green technologies, and that will give us more idea on, for example, if green technologies associated with buildings or green technologies associated with transport are more radical or are more novel or not. That can be a thing that can be at some point being developed. So that can be for further analysis, but it is possible to do it. I don't know if I answered your question.
But thank you nonetheless.
Yeah, no,
Thank you. And
thank you.
if Professor Kisidou allows, we move on now for the opposition of Dr. Emmanuel Pugliese, who is a researcher at UniMed at this university. The floor goes to Dr. Pugliese.
Thank you. Dear candidate, thank you for the thesis, and it was a very nice read. My question is more on the overall thesis structure. You have a central actor of your dissertation is the digital transition. However, in your thesis, then digital transition changes a bit chapter by chapter. Sometimes you're speaking about any digital technologies, sometimes speaking about AI, sometimes you're speaking about the Internet of Things, and different kinds of, in chapter 4, for example, of digital enhancing technological production of goods. You get different results in the different chapters. And I would like now, after these 5 years of invested in understanding the relation between the digital and green transition, if you can give a overview of what you understood and which aspect of the digital transition really matters for green. What do you think is more synergic? What do you think is more complementary? What do you think is just co-evolve in the same time period? And in particular, you have a very long time series. You focus on 2019, that already for digital is eternity, but also you could go backward. And of course, digital technologies in this period, or even the same digital technology, is a completely different animal, what machine learning was in 2000 and what is now. So even from this point of view, what do you think? I mean, if you can add also this dimension to the overall discussion of what you think it's the relation between digital and green across digital technologies and across time and in time.
Yes, that's a very good question, Manuel. Thanks so much. First of all, I think that you are picking up a very important aspect of my thesis and my topic is the following. When I started the PhD 4.5 years ago, everyone was talking about, or when we started talking with Bart and Onder about the digitalization, we were interested in 4.0 industry technologies. Everyone was talking about 4.0, 4.0, 4.0. Then the topic evolved, and since the eruption of ChatGPT and so on, everyone is talking about AI. So I think that, first of all, my thesis at some point reflects with this sort of some chapters focusing on AI, some chapters focused on digitalization, at some point reflects the process in which the technology and the speech within the literature has been evolving. That's one thing, and that's why one chapter is more into digital technologies and there's another one that more digs into AI. So that is one thing that can at some point answer your question. Regarding to the sectors, well, that's a very good question. There are some patterns in which we can identify that this green and digital interplays more. In the case of green and digital technologies, the interplay, what I have perceived is that these technologies, the interplay focus mainly on energy technologies in energy sectors and production and transport. That's basically the ones that are like at some point pushing the green aspect, and also in terms of, as I was saying, connected with process of efficiency and so on. Still, there is a part of green ICT, what we call green ICT. It seems to be not so connected with other technologies linked to production. So at some point, all the technologies that are more software-oriented, AI, are more connected with this green ICT, this green link more with the data component, let's say, and not so into production and energy aspects. So that is another thing that it is important to highlight. AI seems not, AI seems not to be so connected, according to the data that I have used, with more the productive area. So at some point, it seems to be like some sort of different domains at some point. And that's, some author says that it seems that twin transition still is like a kind of hybrid nature, and still is not all integrated as it is assumed to be. So that is basically that. If you ask me now, after all this work, I think that AI is getting like even more these days. And I think if I had to start to this thesis again, I might go directly to study AI green processes, or trying to dig into that, because the amount of information patents, for example, let's say, is higher than other digital technologies. And also because of the pervasiveness that this technology is getting, I would definitely go to focus on the interplay directed to AI, rather than do what I did at the beginning, that was to trying to map or understand what was the digitalization. And it seems that nowadays this digitalization is like some sort of blur, and going to focusing on AI. So that's more or less what my answer to your question.
Thank you. The opposition will be continued this time by Professor Dr. Robin Cohen, who is a professor of the economics of technological change here at this university.
Thank you, Prorector. Dear candidate, dear Mercedes, let me add my congratulations to those of my colleagues. It's a very nice piece of work. But let me move immediately to the second part of what I'm supposed to do. I have a lot of questions, actually. The first one that occurred to me came when I was reading page 9, on the basis of a throwaway remark. But I won't ask that one, because if I did, you'd think I only read the introduction. And that's not true. So let me ask you some questions about chapter 3, and in particular, your novelty index. So you start with a break metric, which is coherence before the fact, coherence after the fact, and coherence across the fact. So a big break would mean everything was really coherent before, everything was really coherent afterwards, and there's no relationship between before and after. So there you get 1 times 1 divided by 0. That's a big number. And a big break, because there's no connection. But it seems to me that an even bigger break is possible, which is that if the stuff after contradicted the stuff before. So you have coherence before, coherence after, and the stuff after says the stuff before was wrong. That's an even bigger break.
Exactly.
So now you have the before versus after gives you a negative cosine.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, and the worst would be a negative 1. So then you have 1 times 1 over minus 1 gives you minus 1, which is much smaller than infinity. It also has the problem that it's negative, and you're taking square roots. And I wonder why you're taking square roots. Because the square, I know it's a geometric average, but the square root is a monotonic transformation. So it's not really changing anything very much. So what is it what is it that you think is misleading about not taking the square roots? Because taking the square roots pulls everything towards 1, right? So you're sort of compressing the range of the possible values. Why do you think that's relevant? Okay, coming back to what I said before, you can solve the negative square root problem by saying, okay, we don't need square roots. But then your index has this really weird feature, right? It goes up towards 0 and goes up as you go from minus infinity to minus 1. So I'd like you to reflect on that a little bit and try and help me understand why the index is built the way it is, because it seems to have these weird properties.
Okay.
So that's my first set of questions. My second question is a little bit more direct, and it has to do with your results. And I'm looking at table 3.3. And you have 16 cases there which you describe using a 4-digit binary number. And what I observed is that anytime the third digit is 1, you get a negative coefficient. I'm looking at the final column, the 95th percentile. Well, there's one exception. But anytime the third digit is 1, which I believe means the after thing is green, and the fourth digit is either green or greater. Anytime the after digit is green, you get a negative coefficient on novelty, which means when you're measuring novelty, green after the fact means the thing wasn't very novel, if I've understood correctly. So can you elaborate on this a little bit? Maybe explain why that's the case. Is it real? Is it some weird artifact?
Yes, can I ask, do you identify this when it was cited green?
Well, you don't actually define very clearly how to read that 4-digit number.
Okay.
Reading between the lines,
Yes.
I think the third digit is green after the fact.
Ah, okay.
I think that's what the third digit is. And the fourth digit is digital after the fact.
Okay.
So I think it's green digital before and then green digital after. That's my
Green
understanding.
digital before and green digital.
Yeah, and
Okay.
so anywhere there's a green digital after, with one exception, the coefficient is negative,
Okay.
which means that's driving down novelty.
Okay.
If
Okay.
I understood correctly. It's quite possible that I didn't understand correctly.
No,
which
it's a
is
very good
correct.
point. It's a very good point. Definitely. Good. Let me start by the estimation. Well, the novelty estimation. First of all, well, it was using this cosine similarity, using the different patent text, and that is correct. Regarding to the square root, I think that we can check if that if this is correct to include it. What I can tell you is that we have a very skewed distribution of this, and that makes to do some sort of transformations in order to have like a kind of good indicator. That's the main thing. But we are open. I think that is a comment that is very valuable to review this novelty indicator. So that's my comment on the first question. The second question, it's a very good thing, because you are saying that when it is the combination, if I may not wrong, and I don't have the regression here, but when it is 1, 1, 1, 1 is the one that is negative.
It's the third digit.
Third digit.
The third digit is negative, regardless of the other digits.
Okay. Yes, well, that could be, okay, what we understand about this is that that means that there is a lot of, not a lot, but what it is identifying is this accumulation of knowledge. And that means that as there is more accumulation, it's like the first 2 digits are saying that is cited green and digital, and then is citing another one. So that means there is like an accumulation of knowledge, and that at some point affects negatively on the novelty, because it is supposed that if you have more accumulation, it has less negative. It is more incremental what it is behind, not so radical. So that is my answer to this appreciation. But I think that is very good in order to review these results and see if they are making more coherence. What I can tell you is that for me is, or what we have written in the chapter is that in those cases that we perceive that there is accumulation of knowledge, we understood that there was less radicality and less novelty. So that's more or less what we understand.
Okay, thank you. The opposition will be continued by Dr. Lilia Stubren, who is a researcher in science, technology, and innovation policy, and who is the director of CENIT, that's the Research Center for Transformation. The floor goes to Dr. Lilia Stubren, also online.
Thank you very much. Dear candidate, Mercedes, first I would like to congratulate you on your work. I truly enjoyed reading your thesis. My question goes to chapter 4, and in particularly to the implication of your findings in chapter 4. So this is about, chapter 4 is about the adoption of green transition technologies in developing countries. Then in chapter 4, you state that firms worldwide face two major challenges: going digital and becoming environmentally sustainable. And you stress the imperative for firms to adopt innovations that address both challenges. There, I would like as the chapter is directed to developing countries, I would like to add or suggest adding a third challenge that firms in developing countries face, which is enhancing productivity. So many regions, particularly Latin America and many countries in developing countries, face persistent productivity stagnation, as you know, and must confront the challenges of digitalization and sustainability while still striving to raise productivity levels. And as you know, developing countries' industrial structure tend to be highly heterogeneous. A small group of firms operates in a limited number of international competitive sectors. These firms are the more productive, are the most innovative, they participate in global value chains, while the majority of the firms remain poorly innovative, much less productive, and largely disconnected to global markets. So, if I understood correctly, your findings in chapter 4 indicate that the joint adoption of digital and green technologies in developing countries is more likely to occur among firms that are larger, more innovative, that participate in global value chains, and that have previously invested in capabilities. So there my question is, how do you think these findings translate, or which implications do they have in terms of the impact of the green transition on increasing heterogeneity between these large, innovative, internationally engaged firms and the rest of the productive structure in developing countries? That is to say, what implications might this have for widening productivity and technological gaps among firms in developing countries? In other words, to what extent could the adoption of green and digital technologies reinforce existing structural heterogeneity, benefiting those already at the frontier while leaving most of the firms behind? I would like to have some reflection from you in that sense, and then ask you if you have thought of industrial innovation and capability policies. Well, which ones would you suggest to mitigate this divide and ensure that the twin transition contributes to reducing rather than widening these gaps? This is my main question. Like some reflection and also some ideas in terms of policy to mitigate this widening of the gap that results from your findings. Thank you.
Thanks for the comment, and I think that you are bringing a very good point, because one of the things that I have, maybe I have to be more clear when I say the policy implication, that is that the result of my thesis are at some point confirming that these transformations, this green and digital transformation that seems to be very important for countries, are widening the gaps that we already had, even when we were not considering climate change, or even when we don't have this boost of digitalization after COVID. So I'm really skeptical about the way in which these transformations develop without some sort of policies in terms of research and development, and also policies that may encourage the adoption and of these two types of technologies. So that is one thing that was not only focused on this chapter, on chapter 4, but also in the chapter that I use trade data. I see that there is this persistence and this reinforced this path dependence. I think that, again, this made reinforce the limitations in the adoption of technologies that we all know that they are persistent, specifically in Latin American countries. In terms of policies, there has to be policies that take these two challenges as one. I think that that is the main path or main idea that I would like to reflect, is that we cannot think of, well, let's digitalize. No, let's digitalize, but aiming to SMEs or firms to reduce, to be more, to contribute to the mitigation of climate change and so on. So I think that the main idea has to be this as a unique way to, at some point, insert the firms into a sustainable development. So I will switch a little bit the speech and say that this has to be all together, like not a separate way. That sometimes still when they seems to be that there are not so interconnected things, especially, I don't know, in the case of firms, still we have modules that are separated. That's one, and I connect with what I was saying to René before, that this idea of having this service that combine both dimensions. I think that that may be aligned with this idea of taking both. And yes, I think that is the main thing that I would suggest to do, considering both, but in a more integrated way into the policy speech, not only in the academic, but included both. And also, if I may add another aspect, is also the social dimension, because it has to be also in a kind of fair way, right? Because it's not only adopting green or digital, but also has to be in a sustainable, in a fair way, in which to achieve social justice. I think that at the end is what sustainable development aims. So I think that in that way is the way that we have to see the thing in the chapter. As you will see, as you said, I didn't touch upon the role of productivity, even though I have data for and in some variables. I think that I use some sales data, but I have the possibility to include some productivity analysis. I didn't in this case, but it can be a further analysis also to try to see how these combine and how they have an effect on productivity of the firms. But basically that my biggest statement of this thesis may be going into both of them in a very integrated way, not think of as two separate blocks in the different spheres that I have touched upon, in the production, in the adoption of firms, and also at the level of technologies. Still, we don't know so much which are the technologies that are moving at some point between transition. We have a scarce things, and that's it.
Thank you.
Well, I think we've got a few seconds for the beadle to enter, telling us that the hour has passed. Thank you, María Menéndez de Medina. The time appointed. María Medina, Menéndez de Medina, sorry. The time appointed for defending your thesis has passed, and the degree committee will now withdraw to discuss the quality of your thesis and the quality of your defense. I request that you and your company await the results of our deliberations and our return in this room.
Thank you.
María Menéndez de Medina, the degree committee here present has assessed the quality of your thesis and the quality of your defense. And in view of its positive verdict and taking into account your previous qualifications, the degree committee has decided to grant you the degree of doctor. Professor Verspagen is authorized to confer upon you this academic distinction in accordance with Dutch university custom. And I invite your supervisor to now take the floor.
Please, all rise.
Thank you, Pro-Rector. You know the drill, Mercedes. I have to ask you one more question before you can receive this doctorate. And that question is as follows. Do you promise to work in accordance with the principles of scientific integrity at all times, which are to be careful and honest, transparent, independent, and responsible?
I promise.
Very good, that's the correct answer. So then, by the authority vested in us by law and in conformity with the decision of the committee here present, I hereby confer upon you, María de las Mercedes Luisa Menéndez de Medina, the degree of doctor and grant you all rights attached by custom and law. And as evidence of this, I will now present you with the degree certificate signed by the rector, the secretary, and the other members of the committee and affixed with the official seal of the university. Okay, Mercedes, Dr. Mercedes. I've learned it's even Dr. Mer. That's the shortest we can get, I think. Or maybe Dr. 4M.
4M.
I can see that you're relieved, and that's rightfully so, because this has been a long journey, a difficult journey. You started in 2020, which means that you were the first COVID generation.
Exactly.
Some people had already arrived, then COVID happened, but you couldn't even arrive because you were stuck. There were no flights. You weren't, on behalf of the health authorities, you weren't very welcome in the country yet, but so you stayed. And now, after a while, when it was again possible to travel, and after having done a lot of sessions online, we did all the coursework online, we did all kinds of other things online, then you were able to travel to Maastricht. And I remember that after we'd seen each other for many times on Zoom, we then met, which didn't last very long because for some reason then later they created Latino Town and you had to move there in the building. So, but you know, that is now all behind us. You have now received the rewards for that. We also learned a lot of things in those days. We learned, in particular, how to work on Zoom. One skill that you have on Zoom, which I've not seen with many other people, is when you share your screen, there's 20 or 30 different screens flashing across because you always have 20 or 25 screens open and you switch from one to the other, always knowing exactly what you do, sometimes looking for the right one to share, but usually finding it very quickly. But so that is sort of a special memory. It's a special kind of way that we had to do it, and it's now more or less behind us. Now, what is really interesting in your case, usually when candidates finish their thesis, they're very proud of the book, and they come to the supervisor and they say, here it is. But this is in fact something, of course, that you are very proud of this book, but it's not the first book that you gave me, because you also gave me this one, which it's a very small one. Mercedes can see it, I don't think anybody else can see it, but this is a book about football. It's a book about the man from Uruguay, and he is a relative of you, he was a relative of you, who had a professional football career starting in the 1950s, moving to Spain, playing professional football in Spain, and then moving as a manager to England, and becoming a famous manager, in particular for Stockport Town, a club that I didn't know, but and I've read this with great interest, of course, because I have a special interest in football of the 1950s and the 1960s. And it was interesting to see that if you look at the pictures, there's really not much difference between Latin American football and Dutch football in the 1950s. The pictures could have easily been from my countries, the pictures that I like to look at. But what was most interesting about this is that I think there are many possible similarities between the careers of your relative, Mr. Danny Bergara, and you, because he was the man from Uruguay making a career in Europe. You, I think, will become known in the future as the woman from Uruguay who made this career. You made a transfer to Maastricht, who signed you on. You started your early career here, had some successes. Today is, I think, the high point of those successes. And then you're moving on to build another career. And I think in that sense, there are similarities between that career in football and your career in science that you are only starting. You have proven in this thesis that you are able to do that, to have such a nice and brilliant career. You have written 4 chapters, well actually 6. There was a little bit of a numbering issue in your presentation also, yes, but there are 6 chapters, 4 of which are the substantial ones. And the interesting thing is that they are really different from each other. They all use different methodologies, they use different data, but they're all centered around this theme. And I think that especially Robin Cohen can appreciate that you have used all of those methods, but you've never really cared much about those methods, because we were talking about issues and then we as supervisors said, well, maybe you should use this and this method. And then you went away. You never asked, oh, am I to learn this thing? Can I do this? No, you simply did it. You applied the method and you never talked much about the method, but you talked about the results. And that's something that I think is a very good way of doing it. So you have already now entered the next step of your career. A while ago, I think maybe already 8 or 9 months ago, you started working in Geneva at WIPO, where there's now increasingly large merit group of people who have a degree from our institute. I'm sure that you are finding your way, you are doing your work, you're working hard, and I think that would be the start of only the start of your post-PhD career, and I'm sure that you will continue to be a football player, but researcher in your case for a while. But then, like your relative, you will also no doubt enter into a more managing role, supervising people, managing research projects and so on. And I'm sure you will do that equally well as you've done this thing here. And I wish you all the success with that. And I hope that we will continue to work on a few things in the future. So congratulations.
Thanks so much.
And enjoy the day.
I want to take a minute, can I? To thank so much to Ander that is there. I want to say hello. And thank you to Ander, because he was super important also in this journey.
Dear Dr. Menéndez de Medina, also on behalf of Maastricht University, I congratulate you, your family and friends with the degree you have acquired, and I would like to thank the members of the degree committee for their contribution, and of course, congratulations go to your supervisors who've done this great job joining you in the overall process. I would like to give the two opponents who were online an opportunity to congratulate you, because otherwise they will vanish and all of a sudden, and that while they've contributed, as I said before, so I'm happy to give the floor shortly to Professor Kesidou.
Thank you. Congratulations, Dr. Mercedes. all the best in your future career, and congratulations to the supervisor's part on there.
Thank you. And then the floor goes to Dr. Stubren.
Dr. Mercedes, congratulations. Felicitaciones. Congratulations also to the supervisor and co-supervisor. You had a very nice thesis, and I enjoyed your dissertation today as well, so congratulations.
Thank you.
And the other person that each of you can see is the co-supervisor, who's Under, let me pronounce his name correctly by reading it, Dr. Under Normaler. We will now going to close this session. My suggestion to all of you as audience is to walk to the lounge and take your first drink or whatever they will serve there, because we will take a picture here with the members of the degree committee who are online also behind us, and that's a nice remembrance for Maria. And then we will take another picture at the main stairs, and in the meantime you can enjoy your drink and build up some well, really enjoyment if once she walks in. So that will take a few more minutes. So please feel free to leave, and so that we can go for the pictures, all of us. Okay, with this I close the session, and once again, thank you all for your contribution.